man overboard retrieval demonstrations at the Southampton Boat Show with Tim Holgate, our casualty, and Emily Walters, our rescuer. We were moored alongside in the marina and therefore had to pull Dorothy Lee, my Halberg Rassie 352, 45 degrees off the dock to make our own stage for each show. We put to sea, as it were, to different music each time. Here, a life on the ocean waves. Tim wore a dry suit and a fetching pilot helmet from Gecko each time he went overboard, and of course a life jacket with an MOB Lifesaver inside. We demonstrated the Lifesaver working with a number of jackets. The ever-popular Sea-Safe Systems Pro Zip with changeable covers, and here embroidered with the MOB Lifesavers logo. We demonstrated the Crewsaver Ergo Fit 290 Newton with the added buoyancy for extreme conditions. 150 newtons is the minimum standard for a life jacket. 275 newtons is the minimum standard for extreme conditions and keeps your head further out of the water. We showed the Baltic Legend and the new Ocean Safety Crew Sport Pro, which Ocean Safety were offering with a free lifesaver included. Tim would step off the boat into the water, the jacket would inflate, the lifesaver would be revealed, the light would start flashing, and the spray hood would be ready to be deployed. I told the audience that for me a life jacket has to have a light and a spray hood and of course a lifesaver. A light for obvious reasons, a spray hood because the wind blowing on your head will always turn you face to the wind. A spray hood will prevent you swallowing any water or being choked by it as you breathe. A lifesaver will allow a rescuer to grab the casualty if they're incapacitated. They might be in shock or have lost the use of their fingers or be unconscious and unable to grasp the line that they're being offered. And a rescuer simply cannot reach down to attach a line to a casualty, certainly not from my boat with a good 1 metre freeboard. With a lifesaver, the casualty has their means of retrieval back on board, stowed within their life jacket. The rescuer gets the boat back to the man and grabs the lifesaver either off the water, if the lifesaver was loose in the jacket, or off the jacket and pulls it from its pouch. With the man attached to the boat, the rescuer can now set up their preferred and practiced retrieval system. During the show, we demonstrated for the main part our system, which uses the Harken 6-part ratcheted block tackle that we developed with Harken for man overboard retrieval, and the Rescue Sling, which is effectively a heavy-duty strop under the knees to bring the man out horizontally. We made the recovery as realistic as possible, given that we were in a fairly sheltered marina, by having nothing set up in advance and having the Harken tackle and the Rescue Sling stowed below decks. With Tim attached to the boat, Emily had to go and get the tackle and set it up from scratch. The setup took 2 minutes every time, from heading below to the point that Tim's lifesaver was clipped into the carabiner on the bottom block of the tackle. Emily had practiced the setup. Everything about reducing the stress of recovering a man from the water is about having a plan and practicing it. She would be raising the 6-part Harken ratcheted block tackle on the spinnaker halyard. We don't trust snap shackles, which I can't undo with cold fingers, so she tied a bowline in the end of the halyard and clipped the carabiner of the top block to this. We keep the Harken tackle extended to the correct length, coiled up in a bucket. To prevent the blocks turning in on each other and thus an unholy twist and mess to the tackle, we tied the falls at the blocks with silks, which we finished with a bow, which was easy to undo in a hurry and with cold fingers. Emily raised the spinnaker halyard to a preset mark and tied it off, first to one cleat and then, as a backup, to a second cleat for security. Then she demonstrated why we use carabiners. Here, Kong, Tango, Locking Gate carabiners, because you can whack a carabiner at what you want to attach it to, which Emily demonstrates. Then she stows the tackle on the upper guard wire while she fetches the lifesaver, which she'd placed on a cleat, keeping our casualty alongside, and then she clips the lifesaver to the carabiner. This has taken 2 minutes thus far. Next, she will drop the Rescue Sling under Tim's knees. This adds a further 15 seconds on average to the setup. It's important to bring the man out horizontally because however long he's been in the water, the pressure of the water on the body will have helped to keep warm blood in around the core. Bringing him out vertically means that as that pressure disappears, so the warm blood can rush to his boots and cause a loss of blood pressure and possibly a heart attack, regardless of how high the lift is. a couple of metres to a boat or many metres into a helicopter. We then demonstrated how a small person can get a bigger person out of the drink. And each time Emily showed how she was able easily to hold Tim's weight between finger and thumb on the hauling line, thanks to the ratcheted block on the top of the tackle. She could have tied off the hauling line with no bother if she'd wanted a rest. She also let him drop to show that if released, he would indeed descend back into the drink, but finger and thumb was all it required to hold him there. It took her just 50 seconds to haul him out of the water and onto the deck, when I didn't stop her to show off the finger and thumb trick. Nearly there. And there we go, back on board. We showed the mob mat, which allows you to bring the man out horizontally. We attached him to the boat with the lifesaver, because nothing happens without the lifesaver. Then Emily retrieved the tackle from below and rigged it. Then she went down and got the mob mat and attached it to the guard wires and a stanchion ready to deploy. This added a further 2 minutes and 15 seconds to the setup time. She then clipped the carabiner on the bottom block of the tackle into the D-rings at the head of the mob mat and lowered it into the water so that it was deep enough to allow Tim to be guided into it with his lifesaver. It took about 30 seconds to get him into the mob mat before she was ready to lift him out. An adaptation of the idea of parbuckling a storm jib is the hypo hoist, and we rigged this and led Tim into it, again by dragging him into it with his lifesaver. This would get him out of the water, and we were able to get him on deck under the lower guard wire. Again, setting up the hypo hoist added time to the rescue, about 2 minutes 15 seconds, and then a further 30 seconds to get Tim into it. The crew felt that the simplest and quickest setup still remained the 6-part Harken tackle and the Rescue Sling. Although, of course, if the Casualty didn't have a lifesaver in their life jacket, or if they were not wearing a life jacket, then the mob mat and the hypo hoist would be handy for getting them out of the water. You'd have to get a boat hook into their clothing or the harness of the life jacket and drag them into the device. It's all about preparation, of course, and you shouldn't put to sea until you're properly prepared. We also demonstrated the line mate. This is something that canoeists and stand-up paddleboarders might have attached to a harness. A line mate is an inflating rod with a lifesaver attached to it. The Casualty pulls the toggle and the line mate fires and the rod extends, and they can hand the lifesaver up to a rescuer on a boat. We will be adding in a ring so that it can be fired by a rescuer from a boat with a boat hook on behalf of the Casualty. I always assume that casualties can't help themselves. A final demonstration of the efficiency of the Harken 6-part tackle was when I stepped into the drink, all umpteen stone of me. A lot, I can assure you. And I was rescued without difficulty by Emily. Of course, you mustn't fall into the water in the first place. You must hang on tight at all times. And you shouldn't set sail without working out first how you might get a man back on board your boat. But if they have a lifesaver in their life jacket and the crew have a plan that they've practiced, any man overboard is well on the way to being rescued. Lifesavers have been approved for inclusion with Sea Safe, Crew Saver, Ocean Safety, Baltic and Spinlock life jackets.